Since I live in my van alone and find myself camping in a lot of remote places, people always ask if I'm scared of a bear coming up to my van and hurting me or my dog Millie, or my van breaking down in the middle of nowhere, leaving me stranded in extreme weather conditions. And the truth is, yeah, I am. Because these are all very real scenarios that could happen. And unfortunately, they have happened to some people. But while I haven't been in these exact scenarios, I have had my fair share of scary moments while living and traveling in a van. And today, I want to tell you guys one of those stories. And if you guys end up enjoying this horror story of mine and you want to see more content like this, make sure to let me know by liking, commenting, subscribing, and turning on all notifications so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads. Now, with that out of the way, let's dive right into the story. Years ago, before I lived in this new van, I was traveling in a much older Dodge van that was previously a handicapped transport vehicle that I converted into a camper van with my brother. And this van was what sort of catapulted me into the life that I live today. I went on my first real cross-country road trip going from Georgia all the way to California and back, and along the way, I was visiting all these national parks, going on hikes, and just living life. At the time, I was taking a long break from work, so I had planned to be on the road for a long time before I returned back to my home state. So the entire time, I was just at an elevated state of mind. I was high on life, if you will. And on this one particular hot summer day on my travels, I was making my way through the desert of Arizona. And I had heard that Lake Powell is definitely a place I should stop at along the way. Specifically a place called Lone Rock, which is this beach on the Utah side of Lake Powell that has this huge, beautiful rock formation sitting right in the middle of this blue lake in the middle of the desert. And people come here to cool off from the unbearable summer heat that this area of the United States experiences throughout the summer. And I figured this would be a great opportunity for me and my dog to take a break from the desert heat and soak in this lake and camp there for a couple days. So after a bit of a drive, I finally cruise up to this dirt road that leads down to this beach. I can see it from my van, like maybe 5 or 10 miles down this dirt road. And immediately I am overwhelmed with excitement because this place looks bizarre to me. Number one, this is one of the first times I've ever been in the desert, so this whole landscape is super new to me. I feel like I'm on a whole different planet, and I'm just stoked about what I'm seeing right here. And on top of that, not only am I in the desert, but sitting right in the middle of it is this beautiful oasis with this blue lake and this huge rock formation, and it just looks so cool to me. So I get overwhelmed with excitement, and I'm essentially flooring it down this dirt road to get to the lake as quick as possible so we can finally cool off from this desert heat. And the way this area was set up at the time, I don't know if it's still like this, but as you get to the end of this dirt road, you'll come to a hill. And a lot of people park at the top of this hill and then get out of their car, walk down the hill to the lake, and then go for a swim. But when I saw that, I was like, why would I park on top of the hill when I can park right on the shore of the lake and have the lake right out my front door? And there weren't any signs saying that I couldn't park down there. Plus, I saw a bunch of other people parked down there, so I figured if they're doing it, I'll do it too. But looking back on this moment now, I'm realizing that this was a terrible decision. But do you want to know what's an even worse decision? Using your hard-earned cash to physically drive your car all the way to a grocery store to manually shop for groceries like an absolute barbarian. I mean, Who even does that anymore when you've got HelloFresh to deliver restaurant quality recipes along with fresh, high quality ingredients that travel from the farm to your front doorstep in less than 7 days, so you know it's fresh. I'm talking meals featuring robust flavors and filling portions like the sesame soy pork bowl, crispy cayenne kickin' chicken cutlets with green beans and mashed potatoes, all prepared by you and ready in less than 15 minutes. And what I love about HelloFresh is more than just about the food. It's about the opportunity to learn to cook new things. Because each meal comes with easy to follow recipes with exact ingredients for each meal, so you don't have to go to the grocery store and buy a whole bottle of Worcestershire, one sec. Worcestershire sauce for that recipe that only calls for 2 to 3 tablespoons. You know what I mean? And because of this, HelloFresh makes your life easier by saving you money because it's cheaper than grocery shopping and 25% cheaper than ordering takeout. And if you want to elevate your kitchen and your cooking skills just like I did, you can go to HelloFresh.com and use the code TheFinePrint21 to get 21 free meals along with free shipping. Yes, 21 free meals. Shout out to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. I appreciate you. Now, let's get back to the story. So I'm sitting at the end of this dirt road, looking down the hill at this beautiful lake that I so badly want to camp next to. And I decide to make the executive decision to drive down this hill and park at the shore of the lake. So I take my foot off the brake and slowly put it on the gas to start driving down this hill. And as I'm slowly driving down this hill, the van stops. And I push the gas again, and nothing happens. What I didn't realize was that this hill was made up of thick beach sand, duh, and now my 2-wheel drive van is stuck at an incline on this hill, and everyone on this beach is looking at me like I'm an idiot, which was super embarrassing at first, but then a guy came over with a shovel and he helped dig out my front 2 tires. And from there, I was able to crank the van back up and roll down the hill just fine, and I arrived right on the shore of the lake. And as I parked and started unpacking my van, getting excited for these next few days of camping in this beautiful desert oasis, something dawned on me, and immediately my heart sank into my stomach. As I step out of my van and start looking around the beach, I notice something. Everyone on top of that hill that I had just got stuck on coming down are in vans, RVs, buses, and everyone on the shore of the lake is in giant trucks, Jeeps, vehicles with 4-wheel drive, and here I am in this big white camper van sticking out like a sore thumb. And that's when I realize the only way to leave this beach, because it's a peninsula of sort, is to go back up that steep, sandy hill that I had just got stuck on coming down. And the reason why all the vans, buses, and RVs are parked on the hill and not where I'm parked now is because getting back up that hill with a 2-wheel drive vehicle, especially with a big heavy van or RV, is pretty much impossible. And as soon as I recognize this, I realize that I'm really stuck here. And I get overwhelmed with anxiety and I start panicking, thinking about all the worst case scenarios, thinking about how there's no way a tow truck could come down this hill and pull me out because they would get stuck too. Finally, I get the courage to go down the beach and try to find someone with a big truck to see if they could help tow me out or give me advice on how I could get out of here so I'm not stuck here forever. And most people said that my van is probably too heavy, but what I could try to do is deflate my tires so they have more traction on the sand and maybe it'll be able to get back up the hill. And then other people weren't nearly as helpful and they were just like, yeah, dude, you're probably stuck here for good, which didn't help my anxiety whatsoever. And at this point, I genuinely thought that my van life adventures were coming to an end, that I would have to leave my van here on this beach and fly back home because it didn't seem like there was any feasible way of pulling my van out of here. It just seemed impossible. Until a man with a absolutely massive truck pulled up next to me and offered to try and pull me out of here. But he tells me to drive my van all the way down to the end of the beach where the hill isn't nearly as steep. The sand is still pretty thick, so I wouldn't be able to get out on my own, but he will have an easier time towing me out with his truck. So he tells me to drive all the way down to the end of the beach, but to be careful because along the beach there are some soft sandy spots that my van could still get stuck in. And the best thing to do is to just floor it down the beach as fast as you can so you don't get stuck. So I hop in my van, I crank it up, and I floor it down this beach going as fast as I can. And I start to feel the van start swerving because I'm going so fast, sliding around in the deep sand patches that I'm going through. And at one point I genuinely felt like the van was going off to its side. I felt like I was gonna tip over. And as I'm driving down the beach for a few minutes, I finally get to the end, and then boom. My van is stuck in the sand yet again. But right before I begin to lose hope, this guy pulls up in his truck, he gets out, he hooks my van up to his truck, and he tells me to put it in neutral, keep my wheels straight, and he's gonna try his best to pull me out and up this hill. So he starts pulling me out, and his truck is obviously struggling. His wheels are spinning out, sand is going everywhere, he's fishtailing like crazy, but then my van starts to move ever so slightly. And as it starts to get pulled out of the sand, I can feel it struggling a little bit. And then finally, we're up on top of the hill. And the amount of relief that I felt in this moment is just unmatched. If it weren't for this guy, I probably would have had to pay thousands of dollars for a tow truck to come out and try to pull me out of here, but there's no guarantee. And if this had happened in a not so public area with no cell service in this heat, who knows how this all could have unfolded for me. But either way, I got out of this sticky situation, and I was forever grateful for this man's help. So I offered to give him some cash for being so kind, and he took it, and we went our separate ways. But of course, that wasn't the end of this story. What happens next was something I would have never expected. So after getting pulled out of the sand and me and this guy going our separate ways, I make my way back down to the other side of the beach where all the vans and RVs are. And I didn't want to park right next to all those people because I just kind of needed my space right now. I just went through a tremendous amount of stress, and I needed a moment to just kind of cool off. So I park a few hundred feet away from everyone else, still on top of the hill, but enough to where I'm not parked right up next to someone else. And at this point, I am just so ready to soak in this lake. So I park the van, I grab a towel, I get my dog Millie, and I lock the doors behind me, and we start heading down this hill to the shore of the lake, and I get in. And it feels so good in this desert heat. After all that stress, I finally feel genuine relief. My van is safe and sound. And here we are, finally embracing this beautiful desert oasis. But after maybe an hour or so of soaking in the lake, the sun starts getting lower and lower in the sky. So I decide to make my way back to the van and start making dinner. And as I'm making my way back up this steep hill, my van starts to come in my field of view, and I notice something strange. There's a man standing at my van, peeking through my windows. And I am just kind of stunned for a second, thinking to myself, am I seeing this correctly? Is that my van? Is that someone at my van looking through my windows right now? And as I start getting closer to the van, I notice that he's yanking on my door handles, trying to get into my van. And that's when I start running as fast as I can to my van, yelling at him, hey, 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 what are you doing? That's my van. And as soon as I get close up to the van, he stops pulling on my door handles, and he slowly turns to me, looks me in the eyes, and says something along the lines of, we gotta get out of here, bro. They're coming after us. And I am just like creeped out at this point and confused. First of all, what the freak does that even mean? What is going on, and why is today so chaotic? But after he says that, we have this awkward moment where we're just kind of staring at each other. And that's when I realize this dude is either super high or incredibly drunk, because he had drool coming down his face, and instead of looking at me, he was kind of looking through me. So he had to have been under the influence of something. And I tried to be as nice and forgiving as possible because I could feel that he wasn't in a sober state of mind. So I offered to try and help him find his way back to his campsite, to his friends or family, but he refused. He was persistent on getting in my van with me and driving away because they were after us. And I started feeling really bad for this guy, and I tried talking to him. I tried getting him back to his campsite, but he just wouldn't let me. And as we're talking more, we're slowly getting further and further away from the van. And finally I get to a point where we're far enough away from the van that I can slip back in and close the doors and lock them behind me. So I do exactly that. And as soon as I lock the doors, I see him turn around and come back to the van. And he's peeking through my windows saying, "Bro, we gotta get out of here. They're gonna kill us." And I didn't know how to handle this situation, because obviously this dude wasn't a threat to me, but I just felt like my space was being invaded and I didn't know how to handle it. So as nice as I could, I told him to go away several times, and finally he did. And he walked away. And after that whole situation, I was tempted to leave this place, because everything that could go wrong today went wrong. And something didn't feel right about this place. It felt like the universe was giving me a sign to get out of here. But at that point, I was just so exhausted and I didn't have the energy to try and find another place to sleep for the night. So I made the executive decision to stay here for one night, get some rest, wake up in the morning, and then go off to the next destination. And thankfully, I never saw that guy again throughout the night. However, when I did wake up the next morning, I saw sober him across the beach with either his friends or his family, so I know he got back safely and he's doing just fine. But while I'm thankful this wasn't a life-threatening situation for me, it made me realize how easy it is to accidentally put myself in a life-threatening situation with the lifestyle that I live. I'm traveling to unknown places on a whim all the time. Sometimes in rough terrain, in the middle of nowhere with no cell signal to call for help if something were to go wrong. And that can easily get me into trouble if I'm not careful. Whether it's me getting stuck in the middle of nowhere with no cell signal, not being able to call for help, or a stranger coming up to my van with a gun demanding for me to hand over my keys to the van. The scenarios are endless, and this whole situation just made me realize how vulnerable and ignorant I can be sometimes. But I'm actually pretty grateful for this experience, because it's taught me a lot and made me realize a lot of things about this lifestyle. And this is a moment that I think about all the time, even today, because I feel like I needed this experience. In this moment, this was my first time traveling across the country by myself. So I was pretty ignorant to all the possibilities that I could get myself into. And I needed this non-threatening situation to remind myself, to set myself back a little bit and realize, like, oh, these are real things that could happen to me, and I need to be more cautious and aware of my surroundings when I'm camping and living out of my van. And I really am thankful for this moment, and I learned a lot, and hopefully this story helped you guys learn a thing or two. But I don't want this story to deter any of you guys that are seeking out the opportunity to live this lifestyle. This situation is very few and far between, and while it does happen, it rarely happens. So don't let it deter you from living this lifestyle, but let it be a reminder to be cautious, to be aware, and as long as you're safe and smart while you're traveling, you're gonna be just fine. But that's it for this story, guys. Thank you for watching, and if you learned a thing or two or enjoyed the story, let me know by liking, commenting, subscribing, and turning on all notifications so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads.